So the way to think about it, right? First of all, we started with timing. What is the timing of your product for China? Are you, can you actually include China in your wave 1 or 1 plus, right? So, including considering China as part of your international multi-center clinical trial program. And then specifically around the patient pool for the indications, China in general, with the 1.3 billion people, have a very large patient population, and the incidence or prevalence of certain diseases are particularly high relative to other markets. So if we're thinking about not just commercially, but also around from a clinical development standpoint, adding China to the mix can help expand the patient pool, and then expand the sites, and then therefore accelerate the timeline of product registration in general, not just specific for China. And then also during these times where there's a lot of restrictions and the hospitals being stretched, we are finding that clinical trials are still ongoing in China because the better control around the COVID situation. So, the nature of the therapy and technology. So that's always important in terms of planning, but specifically related to pricing, right? I think in general, you would not be surprised to hear that there's a higher willingness to pay for curative therapies versus for non-curative therapies, a higher willingness to pay for acute versus chronic treatments. And so in a particularly economically constrained situation like China, and then also very competitive negotiations for reimbursement, those come into play even more. And then the inpatient versus outpatient also ties into the market access mechanisms around that. And then the patent life, of course, is relevant because the cliff on the other end. And here specifically, it is very important to actually have patent in China. So that is a very specific point around that. So if you have some generic international patent, or if you registered it in, Whipple, it doesn't count unless the patent is in China. And then, of course, thinking about when we talk about that fast ramp up, so if you actually got national reimbursement and you traded, a big chunk of the price for that, then you actually need to make sure that ramp comes up. So that means your execution really has to be there, right? So how fast do you need to roll out? How widely do you need to roll out? How quickly can you educate the physicians? How quickly can you get, particularly if it's a difficult to diagnose disease, right? How do you get the diagnostics set up? So all that executional process needs to take place. And in some ways, this is one of the reasons why some of the companies choose to not really go for reimbursement immediately, because they have to actually put that infrastructure in place in order to benefit from having the reimbursement. And then in general, what is the pricing band? How much leeway do you have for the price? So because international reference price eventually does come into play. Where's your current low range? When you submit for negotiation, China does ask for other countries' prices, and for Europe, countries like Italy and Turkey are included, which tend to have the lower prices in Europe. In addition to asking what the US and Canada and some of the other prices are. So where's your pricing band, and how do you think about it, and how much leeway do you have to adjust that? So these are some of the thinking points as you start putting together your model for your planning.